There are many kinds of laughter. Some are warm, some are polite. And then there is the kind of laughter that comes from disbelief, the kind that happens when someone hears an idea so unrealistic that the only response is a sharp breath and a raised eyebrow. That was the reaction, according to several commentators, when reports began circulating that Meghan Markle was considering legal action if her royal title were ever removed. Not outrage, not fear, amusement. In British legal circles, the idea was treated less like a threat and more like a misunderstanding, not because the subject involved wasn't serious, but because the system involved does not work the way some outsiders believe it does. This wasn't about ego, it wasn't about arrogance, it was about two very different worlds colliding. On one side was an American celebrity mindset, where lawsuits are tools, brands are protected, and legal pressure is often used to control outcomes. On the other side stood the British monarchy, an institution built on tradition, hierarchy, and rules that are older than modern law itself. To many legal experts, the concept of suing the crown over a title simply doesn't exist in reality. It sounds dramatic, but it has no legal footing. Titles are not contracts. They are not personal property. They are honors granted and withdrawn by the monarch alone. And yet, insiders claim Meghan took the idea seriously. According to commentary from palace watchers, this wasn't about challenging the monarchy directly, it was about fear, because when people feel secure, they rarely threaten action. When people feel cornered, they reach for whatever power they think they have left. To understand why the idea of losing a title would trigger such a reaction, you have to understand what that title represents to Meghan personally. In her view, the Duchess of Sussex label is not just ceremonial. It functions as a global identity. It adds authority to her voice, weight to her presence, and credibility to her projects. It transforms her from a former actress into a public figure with international recognition. Without it, everything changes. Titles in Hollywood act like amplifiers. They turn interviews into headlines. They turn opinions into statements. They open doors before conversations even begin. For Meghan, that title became deeply tied to her public role, her charities, and her influence. So when discussions emerged, quietly, cautiously, that the monarchy might one day reconsider titles, she didn't hear political housekeeping. She heard a threat to the foundation she had built. This fear didn't come from nowhere. Before marriage, Meghan lived a very different life. She worked steadily, built a respectable career, and navigated the entertainment industry like thousands of others. Success came, but within limits. Recognition existed, but it wasn't global. Then came Prince Harry. Overnight, her life expanded beyond anything Hollywood alone could offer. Cameras followed her everywhere. Media attention multiplied. Invitations poured in. Her name began carrying historic weight. The title didn't sit lightly on her shoulders. It transformed her entire public identity. And that transformation became central to her future plans. Deals were shaped around it. Public appearances relied on it. Messaging leaned into it. Whether intentionally or not, the royal label became inseparable from her brand. So imagine the panic that comes with the possibility of losing it. Without the title, she wouldn't disappear, but she would be repositioned. And in a world driven by relevance and visibility, repositioning downward feels like falling. This is where perception matters more than legality, because legally, the monarchy operates on very simple rules. Titles are granted at the monarch's discretion. They can be removed the same way. No courtroom, no debate, no defense required. And history has already proven this. Prince Andrew, born royal, raised royal, surrounded by privilege from birth, lost his status almost overnight. Duties removed, titles sidelined, authority erased. No negotiation, no legal challenge. That moment sent a clear message. Royal power is not sentimental. If someone born into the system could lose everything, then someone connected through marriage stands on much thinner ice. That realization changed the conversation. This wasn't about justice or fairness, it was about control. About realizing that the power Meghan believed she held was never truly hers. And that's when fear becomes urgency. Because when someone builds an empire on borrowed ground, the thought of eviction is terrifying.
Here is the part many people misunderstand. Royal titles are not achievements. They are permissions. They are not earned through work. They are not purchased, and they are not owned. They exist only because the crown allows them to exist. When Prince Harry received the Duke of Sussex title, it was his. Meghan gained access to it through marriage. Her title was conditional, not permanent. This distinction matters. In practical terms, it means the title does not belong to her independently. It is tied to her relationship with the royal bloodline, and relationships can change. This is where the idea of legal action collapses entirely. There is no court that can override a monarch's decision on internal royal matters. There is no judge who can force a king to grant or keep a title. The concept simply doesn't exist in law. That's why legal experts reportedly reacted with disbelief rather than concern. Not because Meghan lacked intelligence or ambition, but because the system she was pushing against does not respond to pressure. It responds only to tradition and authority. And authority, in this case, rests with the crown alone. This brings us to the uncomfortable truth at the center of the story. Meghan's post-royal influence did not come from independence. It came from association. Streaming deals, global interviews, speaking platforms, all of them were elevated by one thing: proximity to royalty. Not acting credits, not activism alone, royal connection. Without that connection, attention shifts. Hollywood moves fast. Public interest is ruthless. The spotlight does not linger without a reason. This is why the idea of losing the title feels existential rather than symbolic. Because without it, Meghan becomes a different kind of public figure, still visible but less protected, still heard with less automatic authority. And for someone who has lived at the center of global attention, the idea of fading is far scarier than conflict. This is where strategy replaces emotion. Power does not disappear, it transfers. If royal status weakens, another form of security must replace it. Influence can come from wealth, from connections, from alliances that exist outside tradition. This is not about romance. It is about insulation. Because financial power creates independence. It creates private worlds, private mobility, and protection from irrelevance. When institutional power fades, personal power must grow. This is why conversations about future paths matter. Divorce, if it ever comes, would not represent collapse. It would represent repositioning. Carefully timed, carefully framed, carefully supported. Because Meghan didn't leave the royal world to disappear. She left it to control her narrative. And control has always been the central theme. The crown operates on permanence. Meghan operates on movement. The monarchy values stability. Meghan values adaptability. These philosophies were never truly compatible. So the real story is not about lawsuits or titles. It is about fear of fading, fear of losing influence, and fear of becoming ordinary in a world that rewards spectacle. Once someone experiences elevation, returning quietly is almost impossible. That is why threats emerge. That is why panic replaces patience. That is why perception becomes everything. In the end, this story is not about law. It is not about revenge, and it is not even about royalty. It is about power, and what people do when they realize it was never truly theirs to keep.